I know some of you would be here no matter what, but for all of those who wouldn't, thank you. And it's a great community. You know, I love the energy here, and I just echo what some of the comments were before, that I've got a lot of valuable relationships out of this. So we started our journey with codeSpark about 2.5 years ago. My daughter took a Lego robotics class. These are my daughters. And my daughter on the right was really into the Lego robotics, and she was the only girl out of 24 kids in her class. She was the youngest kid by 3 years. And when I went looking for something that would teach her the ABCs of computer science, there really wasn't anything. And the handful of things that were out there weren't very girl-friendly. And when I think about them graduating from high school in 2025 and 2026, right, the world's going to be a very different place. Computer science is quickly becoming part of everything we do. It's not this niche subject that lives in this silo over here anymore. Everything you can imagine can benefit from the power of computer science. And instead of teaching it to kids when they're 16, 17, 18 years old and going right into the deep end, we need to start with the fundamentals and teach it like we do reading and math. So our vision is computer science for all kids everywhere, which is a pretty bold vision, I admit, but we like to go big. So the problem that we're facing is that suddenly in the last 3 years, interest in computer science has exploded globally. It's not just a US phenomenon. There's 10 countries I could rattle off the top of my head that have implemented K through 12 mandatory computer science, including the UK, Italy, France, and Germany. But most resources are for kids over 10. They're boring. They're in English. They require an adult introduction. So even classics like Scratch, if you don't have an engaged and knowledgeable adult to introduce it to you, you're probably not going to keep playing with it. It's only the most motivated kid who would probably find computer programming anyway who will bull his way through the initial introduction to a tool like that. And most of these tools still aren't girl-friendly. They're boy characters and they're game mechanics that boys tend to like more than girls. So there's a lot of work to be done to even the playing field. Our solution is bring the best from traditional gaming that we know kids love, add real pedagogy, and frankly, the best in terms of brain development and child development, and build a new type of game. And we call it the Foos. So the Foos are lovable little characters. They live inside all of your electronic devices, and they're just waiting to be programmed by your 5-year-old, your 6-year-old, or maybe you. One of the things that sets us apart is that we're relentlessly user-centric. We test with kids in our age group, which our focus is on kids 5 to 10, almost every week. Now sometimes that might just be my daughters getting sucked in to test something new, but more often than not, it's one of either the 6 elementary schools that we work with in the area, or we have a network of 200 teachers that give us feedback online. So I'm going to play a quick video for you to give you a taste of why the Foos is different. Oh, sound. So you can see there's no words, everything's visual. We animate the icons so the kids know exactly what's going to happen. We actually go all the way up through conditional logic in our curriculum, so we get into complex topics. Oh, a little. And then Foos Studio is where you put concepts to work building your own video games. And in Foos Studio, you can build a Mario-style platformer game, and you can program everything in the game. So even though a block doesn't come with any programming, if you tap on it, you can program it and bring it to life if you want. Yay, we've won a lot of awards. So where are we where have we ended up in our 2 years of development? And my co-founder's here in the middle somewhere, Joe Shockett, responsible for most of the awesomeness that you see up on the screen. So last quarter, we tripled our monthly average users to 280,000. We have pushed up our 1 month retention to over 50%. So people from mobile gaming know that these are pretty solid numbers. More importantly, the engagement on this platform is incredibly high. As of last week, kids were coding 30,000 games a day on our platform, and they were playing over 225,000 games a day. 2 weeks ago, they were coding 25,000 games a day. So we're seeing, really incredible growth. And this is in an age group where it's really hard to get virality because 5-year-olds don't have Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat. At least I hope to God they don't. The other thing is they're playing the Foos a lot. On average, kids are playing the Foos 2 or 3 times a day for 10 minutes a session. So revenue model, we'll eventually launch a subscription plan later this year. Right now the game is free. The plan from the beginning was to build a user base both at home and in schools, and then launch a subscription product. Both Joe and I come from a subscription background. This is the team. So we've put together a small but rockstar team of game designers, game developers, artists, marketers. Everyone either has a background in traditional gaming or in educational gaming. We're backed by some of the brightest minds in EdTech. Mitch Kapoor, Bill Gross. I was working for Bill Gross when I came up with the idea. He was our first investor. Mitch led our seed round. And we've gone out and sought some of the sharpest people we can find in terms of teaching computer science. So Colleen Lewis is an expert in Scratch and block-based coding at Harvey Mudd. Dan Laceberg is the youngest and most popular professor of computer science at Princeton, and isn't that far removed from teaching middle school kids and elementary school kids to code. And then Tracy Fullerton is really a legend of serious game design and runs the USC gaming project. So these are all formal advisors for us. So far, we've raised $1.7 million in seed money. We will raise another 3 to 5 later this year to fund the launch of the subscription business. And one of the things I promised was some lessons of the joys and pains of raising a seed round. It's really, really hard to raise money, even if you have something good, right? Getting people to write you a check is a difficult process. So, a few things. If you're going after venture money, you gotta have a big dream, right? Don't go talk to someone about your $20 million revenue company. That's an awesome lifestyle company. You should build that company and be very happy and make a lot of money. But don't pitch it to a VC. If you don't think you can make over 100 million in 5 years, then they don't want to talk to you. That was a hard lesson for me. Like, that had to be beaten into my head. Like, you must go big. Homework, right? This goes without saying, but we're all super busy as entrepreneurs. We wear 20 hats. It's really easy not to do your homework before you meet with someone, but you've got to do it. And it's so easy now with LinkedIn and Google and every other way to find out about people on the internet. You need to know what they care about, if they're going to be interested in your stuff. Don't waste your time, don't waste their time. Pitch early. You don't want to pitch a lot of people early, but you want to take an early version of your pitch, maybe even before you have a product, and get in front of real investors and see how that pitch works. We went out and we pitched too early. I pitched 20 people, I got 20 no's. But I also turned one no into a maybe, come back in 3 months and show me what you say you're gonna do. That maybe was Mitch Kapoor. So when I came back in 3 months and I built the prototype with my team that we said we were gonna build, he was pretty excited, right? But that's fundraising. Like, you get many more no's than yeses, and you really have to bull your way through it. But his feedback was critical for us succeeding in the next round and for our pitches that ended up being successful later. Your goal when you're pitching is to find the true believers, right? Most of the people you pitch will not believe your business can work. You're not gonna convince them that it will, right? If they're just like, market's too small or whatever it is, don't waste your time with them. Find the person who's interested and then just hammer on them relentlessly. Sorry, investors, if you're on the receiving end of that. So that's point number 5, relentless follow-up. It's always, like, I call it the friendly bulldog, right? You're always friendly, you're always upbeat, you're not mad that they haven't gotten back to you, but you never stop, right? And you're checking in with a drip feed of news to keep them on the hook. Like, hey, guess what happened this week? We signed this new deal. Or, MAUs are up 20% last month. Like, you're always kind of poking them with something new to get them engaged. When you plan your pitches, you want to do it in a tight time frame, and you need to research who can give you the best intro possible. I knew it mattered when I started pitching my seed round. It was incredible to me how much it mattered. What I didn't have a good sense of is that good VCs are overwhelmed with people approaching them. And the only filter they have is who's giving them the introduction that's really meaningful. I get it now. I hadn't fully absorbed it when I started, right? So if you need to really hustle to get someone who knows them and has worked with them to give you an introduction, and then you need to have a second introduction ready, right? So the first introduction goes out, and then a few days later, someone who's maybe just a little bit less connected but still credible says, oh, by the way, I hear you might be talking to Grant. He's great, I really like the product. I think you should check it out. Bay Area still rules, sorry LA. LA's growing, it's meaningful. I think if you're an e-commerce company or a messaging company or something related to media, maybe games, you can raise money here. But frankly, Bay Area is still center of the universe. If you are going to raise money for your company, you should plan on spending a lot of time up there, period. Focus on smart money and getting a term sheet, right? Your goal as an entrepreneur is to get that first term sheet so that the game kind of flips. It's like when you're single, right? No one's that interested. But suddenly if you're dating this attractive person, right? Then all of a sudden people are like, huh? What's up with Grant? Right? It's the exact same thing. It is exactly the same. And it's silly that psychology works, but it does. And so, if you can get one smart person interested who can lead your round or provide a signal to other investors that, hey, this is something worthwhile, that will grease the skids for you. So that's your job number one. And your goal, remember, your goal is not really raising money. When you're pitching, your goal is a term sheet. Because the term sheet is what allows you to raise the money. And that was a little mixed up in my head when I started, but now I get it. And then the bonus is know your competitors inside and out. And this seems like really basic, but I'm talking about use their product, know what people say about them, interview people who use their product, right? Have 3 things why you're different. In our space, 2 years ago, 2 people were talking about doing a coding product. Now there's 20 companies. I have to work really hard to show why we're differentiated from those companies, right? You need to be prepared for that. All right, so why kids in computer science? What we're teaching is the fundamental logic that's foundational to all computer programming, right? We consider it the ABCs of computer science. So it's concepts like sequencing, pattern recognition, algorithmic thinking, loops, conditional logic, etc. Right? And those same problem-solving skills not only apply to all computer programming languages, but they apply to other types of problem-solving as well, right? It's just fundamental, smart thinking about digital problems. And by the way, if anyone has a question, please interrupt me. I'm just sort of spewing stuff, but I am happy to answer questions along the way. We want to turn kids, so by the way, these are 2 real codeSpark users in Thailand. One of the cool things about our work is that our game has been downloaded in 174 countries. And we get tweets and letters from people all around the world, even in places like Yemen, right, and Thailand, showing us that they're using our game, which is really exciting for us. But we want to turn kids into builders, and even more than teaching them about logic, we want to build confidence in the idea that they can use technology as a tool, right? That technology is something that they can kind of rip open and use in their own life to produce cool stuff. Executive functioning skills. This is an area of childhood development that's really been taking off in the last 5 years. And it's things like impulse control. People might know the famous marshmallow study, where you put the kid in a room, you tell him if he waits for 10 minutes, he can have 2 marshmallows. Otherwise, he can just eat the marshmallow now. And the result of that study was that the kids who waited ended up having better life outcomes. The good news is, for those of us who don't have a lot of impulse control, is that impulse control can be learned. And coding happens to be one of those things that teaches impulse control, because you have to look at the problem, analyze it, map out a solution, right? And then execute the solution, see if it works, and if it didn't work, try again. There's a lot of impulse control involved there. You're not controlling a character directly. As I mentioned earlier, I won't beat this to death, but really computer science is a part of almost every subject we teach now. And I think in 10 years, that I'm not even sure there will be a subject by itself called computer science. It'll be like biology, and you're doing stuff that related to computer science for biology and math, etc. And it's this new form of expression and creativity that is really unlimited. And for the first time, you know, kids 5, 6, 7 years old can make really cool stuff with the tools that are being built. We see, I mean, some of the games that kids build on our platform are incredibly clever. You know, they'll build out in pixel art every single Minecraft character and then have different traps all along the way. Like really creative, fun stuff. Okay, so what's the state of kids coding today? This is Gallup poll information. 90% of parents in the US want their kids to learn about computer science. That was definitely not the case 5 years ago. So this is a sea change that's happening right now. 75% of Americans believe computer science is cooler than it used to be, right? It used to be geeky. It used to be the guy drinking Diet Coke down in his basement by himself. Now it's
You mean Mountain Dew?
Mountain Dew, yeah. Mountain Dew. Or Mellow Yellow, maybe. Yeah. You know, and this is like, I call it the Zuckerberg effect, right? 67% and 56% of teachers believe standards should be required. Many of you might have seen that last Saturday, President Obama announced his Code for All initiative, which includes $100 million that's available direct to districts and a proposal for $4 billion of state support to make computer science mandatory in all schools K through 12. 50% of Americans rate CS as one of the 2 most important subjects, but the punchline, computer science is still today only taught in 25% of schools. So one of the things that CodeSpark is trying to do is accelerate kids' access to this type of learning by not waiting for teachers to be trained and for elementary schools to get on board and for all the bureaucracy that has to gear up and get going over the next 5 years to make this happen, right? We're kind of jumping that and bringing the education straight to the kid at home. One thing, yeah?
When you're talking about the 25%, because like I know a lot of schools, what they do is, oh, computer science class, we're going to teach you Word and Excel and all that, and it's not the logic skills. Is that 25% actual learning the logic skills of coding, or are you saying, you know, all computer science?
No, so that, yeah, it's not like, you know, learn how to do a PowerPoint, right? It's
Right,
real computer science classes,
okay.
but that, there's a heavy skew toward middle school and high school there.
Right.
So elementary schools in particular are still being left behind.
Yeah, definitely.
And frankly, there is a real income disparity issue around who's learning computer science. Rich schools are teaching computer science and poor schools aren't still. It's changing, but they're behind.
You have to have computers, right, to teach computer science.
Well, and you have to have people who are trained. We work with Cleveland Elementary, which is right up the street. They have a beautiful computer lab, right? When Joe and I went in to test our game for the first time a year and a half ago, the computer lab had been open for 7 months. We're pretty sure we're the first people who ever turned those computers on. And it wasn't because they didn't want to use it, it's because no one had been trained. There was no professional development. So that's the problem is, you know, teachers are unfamiliar with this stuff. It's all changing really quickly, and we haven't done a good job of helping them keep up. Oh, sorry, I missed my point here. So the Hour of Code, some of you are probably familiar with this, run by an organization called code.org. It's the biggest nonprofit promoting coding in the United States, at least. The Hour of Code is a global event. As of this past December, almost 2 million kids worldwide have participated in the Hour of Code. Now this is just a taster. They're just literally doing 60 minutes of coding activity, and it can be just about anything from this puzzle game called Lightbot to our game to something else. But it's the beginning of a real movement, and code.org is probably one of 3 or 4 organizations directly responsible for the president's announcement last week because of their lobbying and their work on the subject. So change is happening, and you can see this is, you know, the big quote from President Obama's announcement. Computer science isn't an optional skill, it's a basic skill, right along with the 3 R's. I mean, can you imagine a president saying that even 10 years ago? I can't. But, so this is a big deal, not only for us, but for education in general. Yes, sir?
Yeah, you mentioned that you're getting kids from all over the world, and letters from all over the world. What do you do when you get letters from people in Swedish or Slavonic or
Google Translate. I mean, we actually, even on our small team, and I'm not joking, we use Google Translate all the time, but we have translated our curriculum into 17, Louisa, where is she? 17 languages? 18 languages. So that's one of the ways we help them is, we have free curriculum that's been translated already. The other thing is we actually have a really multicultural team, and so the team speaks close to 10 languages, and so usually we can, muddle our way through. Or we, ask folks who are in those countries that we know speak English to help us out.
Thank you, Grant, so much for your amazing presentation. I thought that was actually really impressive, the work that you're doing. You're really pioneering, getting young people. At what age does this usually start? Is like first grade, second grade that you're trying to enter? Kindergarten, wow. So it's like 4 years of age. Instead of four or five, instead of just playing with toys, they're kind of learning to engineer their own play experience. And I think that's really great for the creativity and also the technical aspects. So kudos. I wish you guys the best of luck in that. We're now going to open up to Q&A. So if you have questions about this presentation, please do ask. Raise your hand and John will walk around with the mic. Save your comments for offline. I know you have a lot of really interesting stories with your own families and whatnot, but just questions and answers right now.
Here you go. Mike. Oh, right. The other way around. Here, sorry.
Yeah.
Switch mics.
Oh,
There you go. Sorry about that.
got it.
More coffee again. Right here first.
Hello?
You can go first.
Thank you very much for a fantastic presentation. Very inspiring. I wish I was a elementary school kid.
I know, me too.
Me too. So, I'm an engineer, so of course, teaching children to think logically is, of course, something I think everybody should learn, right? And structure thinking, pattern recognition, lining things up, and they're great to carry through and so forth. But I wonder, does it also help with creativity? Because if you have a great process and a great way of doing things, if you don't have any creative ideas, the process isn't going to help you. I'm just wondering if that helps you with that in your program. Or
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something actually that we think really deeply about.
Yeah.
So the way the game is structured is different from most of the other tools out there. We really gently lead you into the creative process. One of the problems with Scratch, for example, is the blank page problem, right? What do I build? I don't know. So I could remake somebody else's project, but I'm not sure if I want to do that. So we have scaffolded the game really carefully to introduce one concept at a time, make sure you're comfortable with those concepts, and then when we take you into the creative space, we give you lots of inspiration for what you could build, in addition to letting you remix other people's projects if you want. So what we find is with the younger kids in particular, they start building by remixing, right? And they just tweak and they tinker. And then eventually they, feel comfortable addressing the blank page. But it's a really important process, and we work on that all the time. Good question.
First, amazing. I totally want to download it now.
iOS and Android.
How does it bridge the gap between professional computer science students and playing a game?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I would think of us as the foundational knowledge and the inspiration to go the next step. And then, I think a natural progression would be us, maybe something like Blockly or Scratch, a block-based coding with words, right? And then after that, either a tool that teaches JavaScript or Python. And for example, we are friendly with a company called CodeMonkey that uses JavaScript in their game, and it's kind of a 12 and up game. And I think what you'll see is that whether it's us, building more things for older kids later on, or partnering with people, there'll be this natural evolution. What we don't want to do is what happened to me when I was 13 years old, right? I got introduced to coding, doing BASIC on an Apple IIe. I spent 8 weeks coding my name to go like this across the screen. Boy, did that suck, right? And so that's what I thought coding was, and then I ignored computer science for 15 years. And we don't need to do that. We can give kids a lot more power up front and then slowly peel back the onion to the code underneath. Does that answer your question?
Over here in the middle.
Oh.
Hi, great presentation, Grant. Thank you. So I'm the CEO of an IoT company, and we're in the middle of raising our seed round First of all, how long did it take you to raise your seed round, and what was your most horrible experience and your best experience?
All right, so from my first pitch to closing my final investor, it was 10 months. Now, the first 6 months was this big gap of where we realized we were way too early, and we went off and built stuff, and then we came back. And then it was about 4 or 5 months from that kind of restart to the close. But even when we got, so when Mitch came on board, which was a huge deal for us, that was in December of last year, and we still didn't close the round fully until April, and that was a lot of hustle to get there. But partly, it drug out a month because there was one guy that I really wanted who was a small angel but super smart. But you know, that's what you do, right? And then, sorry, best and worst moment. Worst moment was when Joe and I cut back our salary to like 20% to survive on the last little bit of cash we had, and didn't yet know if the game was going to work because we hadn't launched it. That wasn't super fun. Best moment was probably when Mitch said, you know, when I closed the terms with Mitch. That was the best, right?
He was your lead then?
He was our lead, yeah. Yeah, so it's an easy best, I guess.
Over here, Grant over here.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Hey, thanks for the great presentation. I'm a parent of two. I've got an 8 and a 9-year-old at home. I'm a software developer, so I got started early and I started teaching the kids coding. I actually did find quite a few resources, and we recently bought a Raspberry Pi. And so now I'm faced, as a software developer, trying to teach my kids hardware design and integrated circuit design. Any plans to dive into that, you know, into the hardware side of things and teaching kids, you know, basically, you know, electronics?
Yeah, so no super immediate plans, but I can tell you, like, we talked to a robotics company last week about potentially being the interface for their toys. So it's in an area we want to explore. And I guess what I would say, super awesome that you did that with your kids. Most kids don't have a software engineer dad at home, right? So that's the difference. If you want to talk to me afterwards, I know some cool things you can think about with your own kids. Yeah.
Back here.
Okay.
So, hi and thank you, and for the person in the blue shirt here, we do that, so you can talk to me afterwards.
Okay, good.
But one of the things I want to ask you is, you know, we do professional development for teachers in Baker Tech, and which has all these issues. And the single biggest problem we encounter is that if the teachers don't understand the technology, they're very afraid that the kids will run, you know, in a direction that they don't understand. So have you thought about how to push back on that? I mean, we break it down much slower for teachers. I say things take 10 times as long for teachers for a kid. How have you dealt with that?
So it's an ongoing issue for sure. And we're a commercial product that kind of got pulled into schools. So I wouldn't say we're fully school optimized yet. But what we've done so far is we built a curriculum with the person who's never thought about computer science before ever in mind, and tried to make it dead simple. And then eventually we have some product changes that we're going to make that just make it easier for a teacher to manage a class, which is what we found is that a lot of what determines whether a teacher will use something is how easy the setup is, right? How much time am I going to waste getting started on this thing that's new? So we think about that a lot, and we interview teachers there. The other thing is we give them unplugged activities and printable activities so that if they're not in the mood to deal with technology, they still have things that they can teach with, right? So they have choices. And then we started, I guess the other thing we do to support teachers and kind of get them over the hump is we have forums that we just launched where they can ask us questions. And we, you know, have a person full-time working on answering those questions.
Over here.
Okay.
Hi, yeah, I love what you're doing. Belong to a couple of angels groups, and it's very exciting to hear what you're doing. I am concerned though about the health effects of you know, little 5-year-olds sitting around on their butts drinking whatever drinks the geeks drink.
So I love that question because I'm just going to say it as bluntly as I can. I think it's absolute nonsense, that worry. And here's why. I have 2 kids. Well, I have 3 kids. One is 14. But my daughters, who are the inspiration for this, are the most active kids you will ever see. and yet they also spend hours in Minecraft and hours playing my game, right? It's just a new activity, and frankly, I would much rather have my kids playing Minecraft, playing the Foos, than watching Saturday morning cartoons for 8 hours, which is what I did when I was growing up, right? The only education I got was Sesame Street, and I barely paid attention to that. You know, I was running around breaking stuff usually. So, and I think on a serious note, there's new research out from the American Pediatrics Association, and they just rescinded their comments that kids under 2 should not use tablets. They've basically now become comfortable with the idea that the tablet's just another thing around the house. It's not evil, it's not gonna do anything bad, and what a parent really needs to be concerned about is what is the quality of the content on that device, right? If there's junk content on the device, then yeah, it's a bad thing. But if they do a good job selecting the content, then it's fine, right? So it's a great question. I think a lot of people are worried about it, but I think if you pick the right things to put on that device, you'll be fine.
Over here.
Hi, great presentation. One of your lessons learned was pitch early, but
Yeah.
you said you got feedback that you were pitching too early?
Yeah, so I'll try to be really specific. What you want to do is, as early as possible, like before you think you're ready, have the best possible pitch you can and get in front of a real investor.
Okay, and
Right?
can you talk a little bit about the nature of your pitch
Yeah.
as it was early on and then how it went?
It was all smoke and mirrors. We hadn't written any code. I had some concept art, right? It wasn't even that good of concept art, and I had a dream, and I had Joe, and that was pretty much what I was saying. And you know, and my own background as an entrepreneur, and what was valuable about it is that I learned, you know, what questions I was going to be asked, what responses I needed to have ready, and what elements of my pitch people tended to grab onto, right? And even though everyone said no, there were consistent things that people seemed interested in. And so, you know, then in my next round, I really like blew those things up, right? And I eliminated all the stuff that they didn't like. And I think it's really hard to do that unless you're just face to face in the moment with someone who's in the business of writing checks.
Over here.
So what are your thoughts on how we accelerate the necessary change in educational bureaucracy so that, you know, a biology lesson has computer science integrated into the curriculum, teachers are prepared, trained, you know, all that kind of fun bureaucracies, old school stuff?
That's a really, I mean, there's things I could say that'll sound good, but it's a really hard problem. And the reality is for all the, you know, parents say they care about education, but if you look at how they spend their time, very few actually fight for meaningful change in education.
Yeah.
And I think parents have the most power in the equation, right? If they demand something from the school tends to respond. So my off-the-cuff thought is that parents need to organize more and need to be more demanding, and that's hard to pull off. You know, the thing about the U.S. is everything's state by state, right? In the UK, you know, in September 2014, they decided, hey, we're going to make computer science mandatory K-12 because they can do that. We can't do that. So it's difficult to get around the fact that it's going to be hodgepodgey and slow here. I don't know that I have a great answer, to be honest. There's lots of people working on that question. I think code.org is probably doing the most effective job of driving change because they have a dual-pronged strategy of training as many teachers as possible and then fighting really hard for legislative change. And I think those types of efforts, if you're interested in getting involved, like those are having the most impact right now.
Right here.
Yeah.
I had a question about going big with respect to your total addressable market. What story did you find that worked best for defending your territory?
That's a really good. That was probably the hardest part of our pitch early on, and it's still a little tricky because there's not an established market for computer science products, right? Or even learning game products. However, it's gotten a little bit easier because the learning game market in mobile in particular has exploded in the last 2 years. So it's expected to grow to $32 billion in total by 2019. And that number was a fraction of that when I first started talking to people. So the success of companies like Duolingo and brain development companies and these other things that at least get investors thinking about the realities of, mobile education that have helped. And then we do some bottom-up forecasting as well. So, here's how many K through 6 students there are in the US above a 50K household income. Here's how many K through 6 students there are in the world with above a 20K income, which is actually pretty high for worldwide standards, right? And then we build that up and show it out. So we do both. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay. Comps and bottom up.
Yeah.
Over here, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
3 questions because I do. Okay, 1 question. Okay.
Now don't make it a really long question.
No, it's a simple. Do you actually all your curriculums has been approved or certified? Because I work on the medical industry and educational. Certification is a pain in the ass long process.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We have a little bit of not a free pass, but Common Core does not include computer science. So we map our standards to logical thinking. Now it's coming that it will include computer science, but I don't know if that's 1 year or 5 years. It's So what we did was we mapped our curriculum to kind of the 3 most accepted curriculum out there. 2 in the US, one's called Exploring Computer Science out of UCLA. The other one is the CSTA curriculum, Computer Science Teachers Association. And then we also looked heavily at the UK national curriculum. And it turns out they're all pretty similar, especially when it comes through to the foundational stuff for K through 6. So we played it safe and we mapped to that, and we just used our game to teach the concepts that were in there. That make sense? Yeah.
Over here, Grant.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for taking my question.
Sure.
When you were considering funding and looking for funding, did you think about the Department of Education or the National Science Foundation?
Yeah. Oh,
They
sorry,
have a history of funding things that they want to see evolve and emerge in education?
Yeah, there's a program called SBIR in particular that's a subset of the National Science Foundation. And we actually seriously considered applying this year, but it just wasn't a great fit for our current plans. And frankly, on our team, we don't have researchers. We would need to partner with a university, we have university partners, but it's definitely a route that entrepreneurs in the edtech space should explore. It comes with a lot of overhead. So the downside is there's some real money there, but the money's delivered over pretty long periods of time. So like SBIR grants in the edtech space, for example. Yeah, well, 6 months is an eternity to me, right? And so if you are looking to grow a team aggressively and really hammer on a market, that can't be your only source of funding. But if you're a small team trying to figure out if your thing has legs, I think it's brilliant, right? And if, in particular, someone on your team has a research background and they can serve as that person writing the research part of the grant, even better, right? So I think it's a great source to look at. Everyone in our space should. It wasn't the right fit for us yet, but we actually are pretty likely to apply next year. So, thanks. Yeah, good question.
Over here, Grant.
Yeah.
I don't need this. I'm a high school teacher, credential, business management, entrepreneurship, finance, whatever. And contrary to the popular belief or what I've heard here, is the inability for teachers to learn, computer science. I taught.
Oh no, so let me be clear about my point. Not that they can't learn, they're not getting the training that they need.
But let me go back and say this, that I've experienced with the Bureaucracy and the Pasadena Unified School District. One of the chief things that we're concerned about is how do you assess the development, the proficiencies of these students. Do you do it on a summative basis, at the end of 10 weeks, at the end of the semester, or do you do it on a formative basis where I can test these kids every 2 hours, every day? How do you do that? What do you put in that curriculum that had that component? Because if we can't test If we can't say, well, Johnny is learning A, B, and C in this period of time, like a pacing guide or something, we don't need it.
So let me answer that in two parts. There's my smart-ass entrepreneur answer, and then there's a real answer. Or not the real answer, but the more thoughtful answer. The smart-ass entrepreneur answer is, I don't agree. And what I mean by that is, I think it's really well established that 21st century thinking skills are critical, that working in teams collaboratively, easy for me to say, is critical for students to succeed in the future. And while I think we should be concerned about assessment for sure, we shouldn't hold up the implementation of things that clearly teach those skills, right? Because it's obvious that we need them. Like, that's the work that people do today. It's all group-based, it's all team-based, it's all sharing, it's all communication, right? We don't need to assess that to say that it's going to be important. Now, your concern is real, and I don't discount it. In our game, what we've done so far, and we think about it quite a bit, the way our puzzles are laid out is basically, as you make progress, you are learning. You can't complete the puzzle without learning the concept that's involved, right? And I think that's one thing that games do particularly well, is they set you up to allow you to succeed and or fail and test things, and then as you progress is being measured automatically, right? You complete a level, you've progressed. So what we need to get better about is marrying what game designers know about mapping progress to what educators know about mapping progress. And I think we haven't met in the middle enough yet. But we are working directly with assessment experts. We actually have an advisor who's the head of computer science curriculum in Lincoln, Nebraska. And one of his colleagues is a assessment guru, basically, and he's giving us feedback on how we can build more assessment into our platform so it's automatically delivered to the teacher as they progress.
Well, one of the things that we found out also was that... Okay.
I'm happy to talk to you after. Yeah, great
One last
question.
question over here.
Hey, Grant.
Hey, Ken. Thanks for
great stuff, and I'm rooting for you, cheerleading all the way.
Thank you.
So one of the things that you talked a lot about product vision, you talked a lot about funding the seed round, all that. One of the things people might have missed is you threw out the word subscription. And so you're now raising a bunch of money to change the focus of the company into a hardcore marketing company to move this. Talk about the challenges of making that transition and the cultural changes that will come as your company goes from being a product-centric company to a marketing-centric company.
Yeah, it's going to be a big change. We'll have to build out a marketing machine. There's a couple things. As you know, once you put yourself on the subscription treadmill, you can't get off, right? You can't just be like, oh, I'm tired. I don't want to give you new stuff. And everyone's like, but we made money, give us new stuff. We understand that, and we're ready for it, but I think it'll be a real challenge, and we're probably, at least double in size over the next 6 months. And there will be a lot more emphasis on bottom line and lifetime value and cost of acquisition and these hard metrics. We've gotten to live in this kind of fantasy land where if people love your stuff, then everything's fine, right? And that's great, especially if you're like a game designer. But part of the way we intend to balance it is by, in particular for the creative folks who, really don't want to do the nitty-gritty every day, we're going to really work hard to make sure that people get to move around in terms of responsibilities and get to touch both the hey, this week we need you to work on optimization of the sign-up funnel, but you know what, next week we're going to put you back on mini games. And that's not easy to do, and I'm not being glib about it, but we're thinking about it. So I don't know if there's something else.
No, I just want people to know that this has been, as much as the challenge, this has been the fun part. I want them to hear how you're going to have to take the company through the next phase and the challenge.
And then I guess the other part of that is we do intend to have additional products. So, part of the way you keep that spirit alive is the entrepreneurial excitement kind of gets to lock onto the new product, and then there's people executing on the old product, and you try to keep building that out. But it's a real challenge for sure, and it's a different mindset.
Surely, go for it.
Thank you.